It's a Sunday evening, and I'm really glad to see so many faces at the Quorum. It's a special night for us. Um, so, actually, for those of you who don't know me, because there are a lot of new members, my name is Saloni Puri, and I'm the Director of Programming for the Quorum, for Mumbai, for Hyderabad, and for Gurgaon. And I'm very happy to see you come and attend the events that our team programs for you. And so we begin this evening with a little anecdote. Many, many moons ago, uh, I saw a film, many moons ago, and I don't want to tell you the year because that would reveal my age. So, and it was starring Gregory Peck, and it actually defined for me at that stage of my life what an ideal lawyer was about. Somebody who had great moral fiber, who stood up for the underdog, who championed human rights, who was good, who was honest, who was persistent, who never gave up. And in fact, the character that Gregory Peck played, and I think by now some of you may already know who I'm referring to, Atticus Finch, in a very famous book turned into a movie called To Kill a Mockingbird, was actually for me at that time my understanding of what law and justice was about, how courtrooms functioned, and how courtrooms should be. What I took away from it, I remember, was that courtrooms were great levelers. Everybody was equal in a courtroom without bias or prejudice. But then that was then, and this is now. Fast forward to the India of today. And as we enter the courts of India, there is a motto, which I'm sure all of you know. It says, Satyamev Jayate, the truth shall prevail. And the question I often ask myself is, does it, has it, and will it? And as we enter the 18th Lok Sabha, we are in the fray of electing our 18th Lok Sabha. One of the most important discussions becomes about the Constitution of India, how it is applied, how it is perceived, how it is interpreted. That becomes an important discussion for us. We opened the papers today, and all of you I know, I hope, read the papers still, and besides digital news. And you see the headlines, uh, electoral bonds, electronic voting machines, the CAA, the Citizen Amend, Amendment Act, thank you. Um, special special benches, the new criminal laws. There's a lot of stuff making headlines today in the papers, all related to the courts. And I think we should wrap our heads around such issues, and we should decode some of these issues. And I hope that our guest tonight will help us do that, because she is a legal giant and she is a legal icon. And when I was mentioning to some of my family members and friends that I was getting Indira Jaising to grace the quorum, they were like, "हम तो उनकी छत्र छाया में पले हैं, हम तो उनके बच्चे हैं." So there's a lot of, ma'am, a lot of your bachas in the world around, and we all know that she is India's first female additional Solicitor General. She was the first woman appointed as a senior advocate in the Bombay High Court. Some of her cases are absolutely seminal and path-breaking. Maybe just for, I mean, I can't possibly tell you all of them because it's a very long and illustrious career, but I can point out some of them which I remember. And one of the cases that I do remember is the very seminal, I think it was one of India's first Me Too cases, which was the successful prosecuting of a DGP of police, KPS Gill in Punjab, for a sexual harassment case brought to him by a serving IS officer, Rupan Diol Bajaj. I can never forget KPS Gill versus Bajaj, and I'm not a lawyer. But I do remember that as a successful sexual harassment case of India. She has worked on many issues, Muslim personal law, um, the rights of pavement dwellers, Bhopal gas tragedy victims, domestic violence, sexual harassment, equal inheritance laws for women, the famous Mary Roy case, which is the case of Arundhati Roy's mother, which gave equal inheritance rights to Syrian Christian women in Kerala. Um, the Bilkis Bano, recently the Bilkis Bano case, I know that Indra is tired of talking about the Bilkis Bano case, but how can you not talk about this case where the released, convicted rapists of Bilkis Bano were then put back into jail due to her fight and intervention. So this is a long and special, illustrious career, all leading up wonderfully to this moment. And I think that some of she's been called a human rights activist, a champion for women's rights, fighter for the underdog, defender of the Constitution. These are really big, huge, labels to carry. And I hope that when we are speaking with her tonight, we will get to meet Indra, the woman, the Indra, the lawyer, Indra, the person. And she is, of course, been graced by a Padma Shree. So she's not just a senior Supreme Court advocate. She's the Padma Shree Indira Jaising, and who is here with us tonight. And engaging her in a conversation is another superstar. She's had a brilliant career as a broadcaster, anchor, producer, director at CNN News 18 and CNBC. But like most journalists of our time, she has chosen to carve an independent path and set off on her own and launched her own digital news channel. It's called Anuradha Says. And if you haven't caught Anuradha Sengupta on Anuradha Says, please make time for some of her absolutely wonderful and iconic interviews, current affairs, reportage, and interviews, because she's really the mistress of the fine art of interview. So please welcome Indira Jaising and Anuradha Sengupta.
Thank you, Saloni. I wonder why she goes off the stage and makes someone else sit here, because I think you could just carry on. And that was such a lovely introduction. And while Saloni was introducing us, Indira says, I'm so intimidated. Like, really?
I'm,
Is that being modest? Is
I'm,
that humble brag?
no, I'm intimidated by my own bio. So it's one of the perils of surviving so long.
To be intimidated by your own bio, to be that's a nice line. I'm going to hold on to it. You know, Indira, there was so much description of your life's work, okay? And I think the starting point of today's conversation should be about your love affair with the Constitution, right? You so proud about being the champion of constitutional values, and you have written very eloquently about how unique India's constitution is. So I think the starting point should be your tribute to why the Indian constitution is so special.
Right. Would you permit me to say a few words about what Saloni said
Of course.
before I give you the answer to your question? She referred to the fact that the logo in the courts that you see is Satyameva Jayate. I'd like to know from this audience how many of you have entered a courtroom. I wouldn't wish you to enter a courtroom, but just for the, no, not the lawyers, please, not the lawyers, the non-lawyers. Okay, great. So you do know that as you enter a courtroom, what do you see? You see the judge sitting like where I'm sitting. And what you see above the judge, you see exactly what she said, Satyameva Jayate. So I once had occasion to, so that's exactly how I enter. We lawyers enter the courtroom in the same way that you do. We enter the same way that a litigant or a non-lawyer would enter, from the same door, right? We share the same door when we enter the courtroom. But you know that the judges don't enter through that door, right? They enter through that door and they come and they sit here. So, on one occasion during an argument where I was actually appearing for one of the police officers in Gujarat who who had made statements during 2002. uh, I was representing him in court, and I was getting a little frustrated with the way the case was going. So, and then I stopped and I actually told that judge in the courtroom, I'd like to tell you what I told the judge. I said, you know, Judge, every morning when I enter this courtroom, the first thing I see is what's written above your head. That is where my eyes fall when I enter the courtroom. But you know what is your tragedy? And I said this to the judge in open court. He was then the Chief Justice of India. I said, your tragedy is you enter a courtroom through the back door, and I enter a courtroom through the front door. So my big advantage is I can see what's written over your head, and your big disadvantage is you can't see what's written over your head. And Saloni, that's what you said. What is the India of today? What exactly is the India of today? So I, I am quite proud of what I said to the judge that day because I meant it.
And do you feel even more strongly about it today? That
No, let me not get into that. Let me now answer your question about
yeah.
the love affair with the Constitution. Yes, it is a love affair with the Constitution, and there are there are reasons which are common to all of us, and there are reasons which are specific to me. If I may go to the reason which is specific to me, is that, like many other people in this country, my family came from across the border in what is now known as Pakistan. And I'm not the only one, there are many in this country who, till today, have memories of that moment in history. But what is different about where I come from is it was Sindh, okay? And in India, there is no state known as Sindh. And we are a country defined by linguistic states, okay? The whole country is divided. It was divided in 1961 under what is known as the States Reorganizations Act, based on language. So, what does a person like me do who lives in a country by choice, which doesn't have a state called Sindh? So, if I'm asked a question, where do you come from? What am I supposed to say? Yes, I was born in Bombay, so I could say Maharashtra, but then people will turn around and tell me, but you're not a Maharashtrian.
You're not Marathi speaking in that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in that sense, I might pick up
Yeah.
Marathi, and it's not what we call my mother tongue. And that's when I have always answered to them that I live in the Constitution of India. The Constitution is my home. It's my protection. It's my shield. It is what I use when I want to demand rights. It's also what I use when I want to defend myself against somebody else trying to take away my rights. So, how can you not have a love affair with your own home? Yes, I do. And I think this is true for every single Indian. Eh, It's a constitution which binds us together as one people, as one nation.
Talk about why it is so unique. Other countries have constitutions, but the kind you wrote recently in a blog for a German, site, and you describe very eloquently how unique this constitution is. I want you to, because there is so much talk today about the constitution, isn't it? It's front and center, politically, legally. So why is the Indian constitution so unique? What did it aim to do when we adopted it?
Yeah, so why is it unique when it was made? Let's discuss that. Because despite the fact that this nation was born out of a partition, which was extremely bloody, the constitution makers had the choice. They had the choice of saying that we will be a Hindu nation, okay, because that's our history. That's the way in which we got separated from Pakistan. So they had that choice. But they rejected that choice. They said, no, that's not the choice the constitution makers made. And this is why it is so unique. Despite the bloody history of partition, where they could have easily fallen into the trap of saying, this is a Hindu nation, this is the Hindu homeland. They didn't say it. And the consequence, that is its uniqueness. So its uniqueness is that it gives an opportunity to bond to people of infinite communities, infinite religions, infinite cultures. It, you name it. I don't think there's any other country in the world that has as many religions, as many cultures, as many traditions, as many customs under one national roof as India. And the constitution was designed to allow every one of them to feel, this is my constitution, this is me, this is meant for me. And that's the uniqueness of the Indian constitution. It has worked all these years. How long it will work, don't ask me that question.
But I will have to. But let's go somewhere else now. Last month, there was quite a furor, right? And you seem to be in the news, Indira, if not directly by name, but by virtue of belonging to a certain group of people who have a certain outlook, an outlook that you've already expressed to us just now. So a bunch of lawyers wrote to the Chief Justice of India, and then followed by a bunch of judges who wrote to the Chief Justice of India saying that there are a group of people who are undermining and eroding faith in the Constitution, right? And one of the people who they were referring to would be someone like Indira. So why is it, what is happening here? Because people in the legal fraternity know, but for some of us who are just reading the newspapers and wonderful media outlets like the Leaflet and all the other the 24/7 real time legal outlets. What is going on here? What is the battle? Is this just the repercussion of an old elite taking on the new elite, or the new elite pushing the old elite out? And is it an existential battle that we are seeing playing out since 2014 in all walks of life? And why should the judiciary be, exempt from it?
Okay, so it's an important question which can be answered in so many different ways, and I have answered it in the past, but I have said somewhere that the battles of the future are going to take place inside the courtroom. Okay, see, already the courtroom is a conflict zone already by definition. You've been into courtrooms and you know what happens inside a courtroom. There is a lot of aggression on the part of the lawyers. There is the lawyer for and there is the lawyer against, and you have a severe clash of ideas happening in a courtroom. But the specificity of the situation now, these battles are going to be over the Constitution of India and over the interpretation of the Constitution of India. So, what makes it so important is that the judiciary has the power to interpret the Constitution of India. So, you are going to see a group of lawyers who are going to come there and they're going to argue that the Constitution is not the last word. They believe that history, culture, and tradition, and their interpretation of history, culture, and tradition is the last word. And the kind of arguments that they advance in court are, well, there was a golden age in India. We have a glorious history. And it is that history that judges are supposed to honor. On the other hand, there would be people like me who would say, no, 1947, 1950 was a break. It's a complete break with the past in terms of the Constitution. And no judge can go behind the Constitution of India. If you go behind the Constitution of India, you're not a judge. Okay? So this clash of ideas, which is playing out in the country as a whole, has started playing out inside the courtroom. Now, you're right, before 2014, it was never the case. It was like accepted that the anchor of the the anchor of all law is the Constitution of India. Nobody would have doubted it. But we are living in times where that is now coming under doubt, and which is why you hear members of the ruling party say, well, when we come back to power, we are going to amend the Constitution of India. And they actually don't need to, because by their actions, they have done so much, which is virtually not amendment, it's an undermining of the Constitution of India. So this is what was reflected in that letter of 600 lawyers and also the retired judges. It's a bit shocking to see retired judges. It was, by the way, targeted against the judiciary. And we lawyers were like collateral damage in that.
So, when, I mean, if the judiciary is the last resort for all individuals, for individual rights, human rights, and everything that we consider Indian in, thanks to the Constitution, and when there is such polarized schisms and battles that are being played out, what happens then? You said lawyers are collateral damage, but human rights collateral damage. We know Omar Khalid, the Bhima Koregaon case where 16 people, I think 7 or 6 of them are out on bail. So talk about what is at stake and how human rights and individual rights are getting affected. Because like you said, it's good if people don't have to go into a courtroom, isn't it? We are fortunate, unless you're lawyers or judges or in the legal fraternity. But for people who have been caught in the crosshairs of laws and then are incarcerated for years on end without the case coming up to trial. And these are high profile cases where human rights are concerned.
Okay, so to answer your question bluntly, what is at stake? I think what is at stake is the soul of India. And when I say the soul of India, I mean exactly what I told you, what India was at its founding moment, at the time when it was founded. Now, what does this do for people? Uh, what it does for people is, again, uh, we we are all participating in this huge debate that's going on in the country. The lines seem to be very sharply divided, and we do have we do have our own ideology on which side of the line we belong to. Now, what is happening is, you talked about Umar Khalid. What was that all about? It came out of the Shaheen Bagh agitation. And what was it in the Shaheen Bagh agitation that we were talking about? Saloni mentioned CAA, the Citizenship Amendment Act, where a decision was taken by Parliament and a law passed saying, we are going to fast track citizenship for Hindus who come from different countries to India because there's a presumption that they're persecuted. What does it mean? It means it excludes Muslims from fast track citizenship. So, what did the people in Shaheen Bagh do? They protested with a copy of the Constitution in their hands. You go round and you come back to your very first question. Why is it that the Constitution is so important? That Constitution became a tool of resistance. It became a tool, a, a shield for the women of Shaheen Bagh, those who were protesting. And that then ended up with people like Kulfasha, Omar Khalid being in jail. Now you talked about Bhima Koregaon. Again, there was the Elgar Parishad, there was a protest movement. Elgar actually wasn't even a protest movement.
It was a conference.
It was. But also a celebration of the war at Bhima Koregaon, 100 years. So a few days following that, there was violence, there was a riot, which even the government of Maharashtra admitted was instigated by certain right-wing godmen.
Shambhaji Bhide.
Yes, and or activists, call them what you like. Again, you see the same clash playing out over there. And as a consequence, you get 18 of them thrown into prison, one of whom is dead, Stan Swami.
16.
Yes. So, uh, To answer your question, it's very clear. Those of us who speak up are going to be thrown into prison, are being thrown into prison. Okay. So the challenge for lawyers, she talked about lawyers, what is your role as a lawyer? So the challenge for lawyers is, how do we advance the right to life and liberty in our courts? What is our way of demanding that, as you said, there no conclusion to the trial. These are under trial people. Umar Khalid is an under trial. No court has found him guilty of anything, much less of terrorism. The BK7, they've not been found guilty, and yet they've spent Anand this year. He argued the Shoma Sen case. She was in prison for 6 years. It was a huge challenge getting her out. So it's the judiciary needs to take a wake-up call over here and say that we cannot keep people in prison for so many years without a trial. Today it's happening to chief ministers, it's happening to, if a chief minister's diet can be discussed in the public domain, I think we've lost it as a country. If a public prosecutor can argue that I am damaging my own health in order to get medical bail, this country's lost it.
So what keeps this spirit to fight, to take it all on? I remember in a conversation long back, you said, even when things are stacked against me, even when things seem quite impossible, I approach things like a winner. So what is, because how do you otherwise, it's very easy to fold up, isn't it? And walk away from the table.
No, the responsibilities on your head as a lawyer are too huge. You are not fighting for yourself. You're fighting. Someone else has trusted their life with you. And in a situation like that, there's no question of giving up. So that is why I said that. I was referring more to when you enter the courtroom. You have to enter with this attitude. This is a case I'm going to win. In other words, you have to have confidence in yourself and in your argument. That's why one of the interesting words that Saloni used was honesty. Now, I'm not saying, oh, I'm a very honest person, but I am saying that what I say in a court of law is something I believe to be true. But if I don't believe something to be true, I can't articulate it in a court of law. So that's really what it's all about. When I said being a winner, it doesn't mean you necessarily win.
Yeah.
But it's the approach with which you enter a courtroom.
So how do you, what happens next in these cases, and in this, and not, I don't mean specific cases, but just when this is the scenario that you've painted out, what happens next?
Much will depend on the outcome of the election 2024. Uh, other academics have documented the fact that when you have a very strong executive, the judiciary becomes weak. But I think it's too simplistic an understanding of the situation. But you certainly are passing through a time when the executive has shown strength. But what is their way of showing strength? Their way of showing strength is to use brute force.
Yeah.
They have not shown strength of ideas. They have not shown strength of persuading people to their point of view. But they have shown brute strength. And one indication of that is just putting people in prison. Prabir Purustaya of
Newsclick. Yeah.
200, you tell me, your profession, 200 journalists who've had their devices confiscated, their laptops, their iPhones, their tools of the trade taken away and not returned till today. Prabir is in prison for 6 months, right? So when you have such a severe attack on the media, what answer can I give you to this question except to say that unless that sense of balance and equilibrium is returned in society, where a journalist is not targeted for being a journalist, where a lawyer is not targeted for being a lawyer, where professions are respected, where businessmen don't have to give bribes in order to get government contracts, where advertisements don't dominate your newspapers every day. Somebody was commenting that on the day when the country went to the polls, uh,
Yeah.
every single newspaper had the BJP ad. It's money. It's money which is flowing into the media in a very big way. And I think Salome mentioned, and a friend of mine in CNN 18 who had asked her to come here today, and I said, you would be here. She said, you know what? All the good journalists have left CNN 18. So that's the answer to your question. The future is to undo all this bad damage that has been done.
We had the emergency. I mean, some of us have heard about it and read about it, others have experienced it. Is there any learning from there that could apply here, of how to survive and how to ensure again that, or it's just the elections and how people decide which way the executive will be, whether the executive will be diluted or strengthened further with a majority verdict?
Yes. You brought up the emergency, but I have to tell you, in my opinion, there is no parallel between what happened during the emergency and what's happening now. And the reason, in my opinion, is because the emergency was there in black and white on paper.
Yeah.
And it's very much more easy to challenge a document or which tells you, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to censor the press. I'm going to suspend civil liberties. Then you know where you're coming from. You say, you cannot suspend civil liberties. Your battle is clear. But what has happened today, I don't even call it an undeclared emergency. Some people do. I say that the Constitution is simply being ignored. Okay? It's like you take this glass and you put it away over there behind the chair, and it's there. So uh, uh, the government can argue, look, we have not damaged the Constitution, we have not amended it, we have not declared an emergency. So what are you talking about? And that's why your battle is very much more difficult today than it was during the emergency. Secondly, of course, the emergency was lifted within 2 years through a popular election. We've been living under this regime for more than 10 years, and we don't know whether we'll be there for the next 5 years. So there are really no comparisons. But the learning is just as much as there is oppression, there is also resistance. These two streams have run parallel in our country.
And dare I say, would you agree if I said that civil society resistance versus opposition parties resistance, it's the civil society resistance that seems to have emerged again through the courts, through legal recourse and measures, isn't it, that has provided resistance and movements, people's movements?
Yes, it's civil society is strong in this country. It is very strong, and it has provided. Somebody mentioned the other day that after the elections, the real opposition is going to be civil society, not the members of parliament who are sitting in parliament. In any case, you can see what's happening to people sitting inside parliament. Someone like Mawa Moitra, who provides resistance, she can be picked up like a fly and thrown out of parliament. So I see a bigger role for civil society in the days to come. And I do see civil society being up to the challenge.
I'm not sure everybody knows here, but the fact that we can see live streaming of the proceedings in court is thanks to Indira. And if you do watch it, it's really quite an eye opener. I saw the same-sex marriage case being argued, and there's so much you don't understand, but there's also so much you get to see as to how a court functions. So this transparency, whether it's live streaming, whether it is the social media age where you have Leaflet, bar and bench, live laws, so many other real-time reportage coming out of courts, it has brought transparency. It has also made judges play to the gallery in a way, isn't it? Would you agree?
Okay. So the case for live streaming was brought by me in my own name, Indira Jaising versus Secretary General, Supreme Court of India. Uh, I have taken a few cases to court in my own name, but they always concern the functioning of the judiciary. I don't tend to go outside that because I feel uh, there are others who can. And for what's wrong with the judiciaries, lawyers do know about it, so they can take these issues to the court. So what was the motivation for that live streaming case? It was it was apart from transparency, it was accountability. And like we are taught from law school, courts. What is so special about courts? Courts are public. Uh, Now, how public is public? If you need to go through 3 levels of security to get to the courtroom, in the Supreme Court anyway, they have a medium security zone, then a high security zone, and finally you enter the courtroom. And initially, the press used to be physically present in the Supreme Court. Now they cannot be personally present in court. And that's one of the fallouts. They say, why? Because you have live streaming. Why do you want to enter the courtroom? So the thing that drove me to file that case was years and years of watching judges behave like almost like tyrants. Now, why do I use the word tyrant? Okay, they haven't been tyrannical with me, but that's not the point. See, there is a hierarchy. I mean, a entrenched hierarchy in the judicial system. To what extent it exists in other institutions, I'm not aware. But the hierarchy goes this way. At the top is the Supreme Court. Below that is the High Court. Below that, there are the sessions and district courts. Below that, there are the magistrates' courts. And you go down the line, and as you go down the line, you become less and less important, less and less relevant. You become almost a nobody by the time you've reached the magistrate's level. And this kind of what's the word for it? This kind of authoritarian structure is apparent to me. It should be apparent to anybody who walks into a courtroom. Now, what I felt is that if you have live streaming, this will become visible. What was invisible will become visible. And hopefully, judges will be subjected to this kind of scrutiny that not just the intellectual argument, that's obviously there, but the feudalism that exists in the institution. Uh, it's particularly bad for women till today. Again, Saloni mentioned the case of Rupandel Bajaj versus KPS Gill. But I have had occasion to do cases on behalf of women judges who were judges in the district court, who were sexually harassed by high court judges. Now, I was alarmed because I said, if the judiciary can't protect its own, how will it protect other women who come to the courtroom with cases? And also, you should be able to see the arguments. Which one of the first sexual harassment cases that I had witnessed in court, even in the Gill case, the lawyer for KPS Gill told the judge, "Oh, today she's making an allegation against KPS Gill. What if tomorrow your secretary makes an allegation against you of sexual harassment?" These are the kind of arguments which are advanced in court, and I felt that the world needs to know that. Make up your own mind. I don't accept my statement that there is this level of male chauvinism inside a courtroom. You make up your own mind. You look at what's going on in the court, and the only way you can do it if there is live streaming. So yes, after live streaming, I have noticed a lot of people putting out small little clips of judges who are atrociously arrogant and atrociously, the other extreme. Not most judges are not.
There was this news item recently, either Maharashtra or Gujarat. There was a judge who was very rude and insulting to the female judge with him. I can't remember. Anyways, it'll come.
You'll see,
Yeah.
you see this. You can see it for yourself and make up your own mind.
Yeah.
That if I was a woman in the courtroom, how would I feel? There's the other issue of disproportionate time being given to women to argue in court, but there are multitude of issues. But the worst is sexual harassment of female judges by male judges in the hierarchy, and then you make statements, we want to increase the number of women. I know women who've dropped out of the judiciary because of this kind of treatment that they have received. Now, coming to your question about what impact this is going to have, we've talked about the positive impact. Is there a negative impact?
Yeah,
That's
is
the
there?
question. In recent times, I've noticed that judges have started having almost like a public relations officer who addresses, who advises them on how to address the press. And so this is happening. Now, this has a positive and a negative because I feel the positive part is judges should communicate with the general public outside the courtroom. But the negative part, I was told that even when we were arguing the case, oh, look what happens in Parliament, you'll see grandstanding of MPs because they know the focus of the cameras, and it is going to happen. And let's talk about print media. You raised the question of Leaflet. Yes, Leaflet is a web portal of legal news and opinion, which I and my partner co-founded in as recently as 2018.
Yeah. But you had something before that as well.
That
Yeah.
was the print edition
Yeah.
of the Lawyers Collective.
Yeah,
It was a
yeah.
magazine called The Lawyers.
Yeah.
But changing over to the digital era, we started this. And I remember at that time, somebody actually told me, at your age, how can you start a new enterprise?
At your age.
Yes.
At your age.
Yes, at my age. That was the question put to me. Are you starting a business enterprise at this age? I said, to begin with, it's non-profit. But apart from that, please don't talk about my age. You might be worried about your own. I'm not worried about mine. Yeah. So, what a ridiculous question to ask me, of all people. Yeah. So, yes, the but we at the Leaflet try to keep our legal journalism very focused on issues, not on personalities. And we try to avoid, or we do avoid, we have a fantastic editor. And there's clear instructions to the editor to avoid this clickbait journalism. So we will not report irrelevant comments made by judges in court which don't find a place in the judgment. So there's a lot to be said about responsible journalism as well.
Of course.
This is what we try and do at the Leaflet, maintain a certain level of responsible legal journalism.
Isn't there a case, Indira, for legal literacy, if I may call it that? We talk about digital literacy, legal literacy, because it's only when you're in the crosshairs of the law that you realize just what you don't know and how much you need to know some basics to run to live, isn't it?
Yeah. So I've been having this conversation with some of my friends, and many of them have told me that it begins in the classroom, in a school, with children of age 7, 8, 9, 10. That's when they need to learn about the Constitution of India, not at a later age. And uh, that's where I think our education system is also being destroyed. But what you call legal literacy, you could call it constitutional literacy.
Sure.
You know, and it has to begin in schools if you want to. And then as you grow older, you fine tune your understanding of the Constitution. You see, each of us should ask the question to ourselves: what does this Constitution mean to me? What does it have to offer to me? If today I can come and sit here and talk to you freely and frankly, it is the right to free speech given to me by the Constitution. It's my right. And I know there are consequences to exercising your right, but the right is there. So you are right in saying that it's the legal awareness
Yeah.
that that is needed. Uh, But then live streaming was part of that effort.
In that in
Yes.
that zone. But how has the judiciary, and I'm talking about all different aspects of the judiciary, whether it's lawyers, judges, the legal fraternity, how has this kind of transparency impacted it overall? I mean, I know you've just talked about either grandstanding or accountability or better behavior, all of that, but there's so much. In 2018, we were really shocked by that historic four judges conference. You attended that press conference that the four judges called, the senior most judges at that time, casting very serious aspersions and asking very critical questions of the then Chief Justice of India. So the point I'm making, I think I'm trying to get to, is this concept of contempt of court, of everything that happens within the judiciary and the legal fraternity is known, but in that community it's now all pretty much out there, isn't it? Like, I can see a lawyer commenting on a judgment. So things have changed. There's been a paradigm shift also, thanks to the digital age, good or bad, I'm not sure, but a massive paradigm shift in the way the judiciary stroke legal fraternity is operating today. So the political schism and change, the digital age and transparency, initiatives like yours that have also helped that. Where is the old-fashioned notion of contempt of court, and the judiciary and judges and everything is above scrutiny in that sense?
You're right that there's been a paradigm shift.
Was it when the was that the moment of the four judges conference in 2018?
No, I think it's more things like live streaming, things like legal journalism, the development of legal journalism as a separate form of journalism, and the digital age. It's more that. And it wasn't so much that conference. So uh, the fear of contempt of court has reduced, okay, in the general public. You will notice, as I said, the battles of the future are in the courtroom, and therefore they get reported, okay. So you will find people commenting on pending cases, okay. There was a time when you could never, ever comment on a pending case, and now you will see them commenting.
Indira, not Indira, sorry, um, Indrani Mukherjee.
Yes, yes, that's
On
that.
Netflix.
It's a classic example. It is a classic example of a pending case being turned into a Netflix OTT serial. Okay,
A show
now
for entertainment.
that did surprise me a little bit, because the issue did go to court. There was a challenge saying that you can't have a serial about a case which is still pending. And speaking for myself, I agree with that point of view. That brings me to the answer, second answer to your question. Why not? Because it can create prejudice against a person against whom a case is pending. So let me give you the example of Afzal Guru, where this does actually impact. Talking about a pending case or making a movie about a pending case can impact the litigant so badly. It happened in the case of Afzal Guru. And Z TV made a movie or movie about it, and said that, well, that he was a terrorist, etc., etc. And at that time, his case for challenging the penalty imposed on him was still pending. The trial was over, but the case was pending. And the Supreme Court said it was all right for Z to make that movie, which again I thought was wrong. So I was a little surprised to see Indrani Mukherjee's pending case turned into a serial, because it can going to the extent of making a case. It's one thing to comment on the legalities. It can lead to miscarriage of justice. And so there has to be that, in my opinion, there has to be a borderline where you can, the borderline, okay, I'll tell you where the borderline, I first came across it. It was in England, in the thalidomide case, where the manufacturers of thalidomide were taken to court. Um, no, Thalermite took the press to court for talking about the impact that this drug had on unborn children. And they said this is contempt of court because the matter is pending. And their courts, I think, held that it was contempt. The matter went to the European Court of Justice. They said it's not. And there they said when something is of such great public interest, then the public has a right to comment on it. So there is a distinction between something which is in public interest that you can comment about and something that could affect you. If tomorrow I was accused of a grave crime, I wouldn't like the whole world to be talking about whether I had committed the crime or not committed the crime on media.
You mentioned Anand, he's sitting there. I read a quote of Anand's in the context of the Varavara Rao case, the bail conditions, and I think he said it would take 10 years, even if the trial started and the trial had not, when the bail was finally given. Why is this we are familiar with it. We've had movie dialogues. Tariq Pe Tariq is a very well-known movie dialogue. Why on earth is the legal process in India so slow? And these are all, very high profile cases. What about all the under trials? And our jails are filled with them, people who have no money, whose causes are not as constitutionally relevant or significant. What is going on?
So you hit the nail on the head when you talked about money, okay? All right, when it comes to the Bhima Koregaon case, whether it's Anand or whether it's me, we do our services pro bono, okay? But we can't go to every prison,
Of course.
you need a functioning legal aid system, which we don't have. That's the first point. So it's a lot to do with money. Secondly, I mean, yes, and it's to do with class. Okay, if you're upper class, you can have your case decided in 2 days or one day. Arnab Goswami managed to get his case listed in a day in the Supreme Court of India. So, I wonder if you recall that on one particular, again, it was live stream, on one particular Constitution Day, which falls on 25th November, there was a meeting of all judges of all the high courts, chief justices and the chief justice of India. And the president of India was speaking at that meeting. And she had a formal speech, which they all do. After she finished her formal speech, she kept it aside and she looked at every one of the chief justices sitting over there and she said, "You please answer my question. Who are the people who are languishing in jail for years together? Okay, without any one of you doing anything about it." And then she gave the answer. She said, "These are the Adivasis. These are the poor. These are the illiterate who are sitting in the jails for years together without you people doing anything about it." I mean, I actually saw a lot of judges hang their head in shame. And after that, there were some moves uh, to for the chief justices to visit prisons and see if they could come up with schemes. And they're there for petty crimes. I know women who are sitting in a prison in Maharashtra. Why? Because they tried to get themselves an abortion. Now, what are you going to do? You look at the nature of the crime which is alleged against these people who are sitting in prison, and you will get your answers.
And Sudha Bharadwaj's book From Fasi Yard actually documents women and women who are incarcerated and the kind of crimes they are caught for. I think one of the most interesting things I read there were how sometimes women who are lovers or families or related to men who have committed crimes and they're picked up. It's shocking what's going on. So, but is there given the view you've had of the judiciary and of the system, how can this be reduced? The time it takes to trial, the time it takes to hear and close cases. And every government talks about reforms, judicial reforms, nothing happens.
I don't think there is any solution to this problem except to decriminalize a lot of things which are today criminal, which are considered criminal, which are not really criminal. Okay, again, I'm sorry, I have to refer again to Anand. He's sitting here. He's been campaigning for decriminalizing of something like consumption of marijuana in small amount. Please go to Punjab, open the prison doors and see how many people are sitting there. There is no solution to this problem except decriminalization of social behavior, which is not criminal. Okay?
So the new sets of criminal laws that replace the IPC, and we heard the Chief Justice of India in the papers today say it's a watershed moment. I mean, obviously, I have no idea if it is a watershed moment. I have no idea if these are better. What do you make of it? Do you see this suggestion of decriminalization, re-looking some social behaviors and decriminalizing? Is this a possibility under the new laws? Because, I mean, a decriminalization of same-sex, of homosexuality is something that was such a milestone historic moment, and it took so long. And then what a process, the Delhi High Court gave it, and then the Supreme Court sort of struck it back down, and then it was after the privacy judgment, I think it was argued again, and here we are now talking about wanting marriage rights and perhaps getting civil union rights. So,
Okay,
yeah.
so I really don't want to address this issue anymore. I don't think it was such a big problem, the delays. The problems went a lot deeper than that. Uh, Delay is sometimes deliberate. Okay,
Yeah.
uh, it's when the court wants to put something under the table, they can delay it endlessly. So there is no solution to that problem. It's not a problem of having too much work. The new criminal laws, the first of all, I'm sorry, I have to say that I don't think the Chief Justice should have commented about them because they're likely to be challenged in the court. So to answer the question why, yes, he focused on the fact that a lot of it had technology enabled investigation of crime, but technology enabled investigation of crime can be counterproductive. In the Bhima Koregaon case, the whole
Yeah.
issue
It's
was
been
planting
planted. Yeah.
evidence electronically. So one can't be so flippant about a criminal law, particularly criminal law, because I told you it's about life and
Yeah.
liberty. But these new laws will require a separate discussion. I can't go
Sure.
into it.
Sure.
But one thing is clear, there is a further criminalization of all forms of protest. Anti-national. They're introducing offenses, which they say this is the offense of being anti-national, which we've never had in our country before.
Okay. On that note, should we open up for 5? Yeah. Okay. No, I mean, if I can do some questions and then come back. Any questions? Yeah, there. Go for it. There's a mic right at the back.
Yes, thank you. Yes. Indira, let me take you back to the Constitution. Um, have you noticed that the sacrosanct Constitution, which is our shield, which we rely on for protection of rights and so on, has been so cleverly bypassed by the present regime by turning attention away from something you just ended your conversation with, to the nation and nationalism, so that you can actually be dismissive of the Constitution and focus on the nation as an identity to be secured, promoted in perpetuity. And a lot of the attention from on behalf of the public has therefore shifted from the sanctity of the Constitution to the sanctity of the nation. I'd like you to comment on that.
Yeah, but your presentation would be incomplete without saying that when they refer to the nation, they mean Hindu nation. Okay, it's not just nation. It's a Hindu nation that the shift has been to. And that's where I was telling you that we grew up believing that there was an anchor, and that anchor was the Constitution, and that Constitution was secular. Okay, it's that needle which is not just nation. I mean, okay, it is without the word Hindu, uh, the word nation would mean nothing to them, apart, of course, from the fact that we are a civilization, apparently, which goes back 3,000 years. I don't know, I was not there 3,000 years ago, so I can't tell you what kind of civilization it was. I know the civilization that I've seen now in the present moment. What is our civilization in the present moment? And if what I see in the present moment as being India's civilization is something I don't like, because as I said, I'm not a Hindu nationalist. I simply am not a Hindu, and I don't wish to be. So yes, you're right. Attention has been shifted, but it's too premature to say that people have bought into it. Too premature.
At the back. Yeah.
Hello, ma'am. As a lawyer, I just wanted to know your opinion on something that I think is a personal professional hazard, which is our uniform in courts. The three layers during the summers where we're sweating profusely, inside AC, outside it. It may be trivial considering the issues that we spoke about, but I think somebody has to say something about it. Do we need that in this country?
The three layers that lawyers have to wear in the heat and
Oh,
something
oh,
needs to be done about
well,
it.
you know very well that I was the person who took the whole issue of how to designate seniors to court. We certainly don't need those layers of garments that are thrust upon us. And I have tried repeatedly to approach the Bar Council of India. I would like you to write a letter to the chairperson of the Bar Council of India and say that we want a change in these garments. And you know, in the Delhi High Court, you're not required to wear a gown in summer. So, well, if it's about comfort, then it has to be about comfort all the way.
Any more questions? Ah, there. Right.
Hello, ma'am. Thank you for coming. Uh, just a small point. I think we often tend to think about the executive as the sort of a monolith, right? But it's not actually that. A lot of the things that are happening would not happen if you don't have the buy-in of institutions which are supposed to be semi-autonomous at least. So you can't arrest a chief minister without a semi-autonomous investigation wing, a semi-autonomous prosecution wing. You can't suspend MPs without co-opting the Lok Sabha secretariat like that. So do you think that this is slightly more than what we understand to be just brute force, and there is some level of ideological conformity that's building up? And if that's the case, how long until the courts can actually hold up to whatever extent they're holding up the constitution, short of something very shocking happening, which then brings the public back? So could we be in a situation where something like what Pradhap Bhanu Mehta says, if it's a society that's now relying only on the courts to save itself, it's already lost the battle?
Do I understand your question to mean that there is a kind of an over reliance on courts to find solutions to the big issues of our times? Is that your question?
Sorry, partly yes, partly also the fact that at some level, a lot of the people buy into this idea of being a Hindu national nation. Perhaps that's what's happening, which is letting people to do the sort of things or to sign up to things which they would not normally sign up to. The executive, yeah.
Well, I mean, to the latter question, I think there's a very cynical use of religion, which we are witnessing. Uh, it's your choice. If you want to be religious, you be religious. If you want to be an atheist, you be an atheist. But the cynical use of religion for vote catching is one of the defining moments of our time, for which the ruling party and the executive alone has to take responsibility. These things don't happen spontaneously, okay? They are instigated, okay? This, in the same way that riots are instigated, in the same way that lynching is instigated, in the same way through dog whistles, you find, well, I mean, I won't be surprised if violence is the defining governing principle in this country in the years to come. It won't surprise me. On the overuse of the courts, uh, again, the answer could be yes and no. There was a period when there was overuse of the courts in the post-emergency phase. To begin with, in the post-emergency phase where public interest litigation emerged, it had a very positive role to play, very, very positive role to play. A right to housing, right to health, a lot of social and economic rights came through the courts, and rightly so. And the courts do have a role to play in establishing those rights very firmly. They have to, because the courts enjoy a certain legitimacy which goes beyond the legitimacy which the executive or politicians enjoy. And that is at stake today, whether the courts will be able to retain that legitimacy. I don't see, for example, myself as overusing the courts, okay? In the sense that most of the time I find myself fighting a very defensive battle. It's like, what do you do when you see your rights being eroded? Are you going to sit quiet and say, no, 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 I'll fight my battles only on the street? I can't accept that. Okay, those battles are being fought in court and will continue to be fought in court. To answer your question, this debate surfaced during the Shaheen Bagh agitation. At least a lot of lawyers came up to me and said, you know, it's a very good thing that all these protests are taking place rather than having the case heard in court. Okay, so yes, there's a legitimate point to be made there. Okay, but if you're asking about the specific moment today, I don't think the courts are being overused. No, we are fighting defensive battles.
Okay.
Uh, Ma'am, I have one question. I'm this side.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi.
Come forward.
Yeah.
If you don't mind.
Uh,
Great.
Ma'am, do you feel that?
Why don't you come forward?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
can see you clearly.
So, ma'am, do you feel that the Indian judiciary also uh, there is some sense of uh, nepotism within the judiciary, and we do talk about everything else, but within the judiciary also there's nepotism. Number one. Number two, we very recently had somebody from the Calcutta High Court just left his office and he's standing for elections. So while we are talking about what judiciary to be the savior, but have they also, erstwhile also and now also, they're falling for the lure of it?
Nepotism in the judiciary is your question, right? Is there nepotism
Yes.
in the judiciary?
And
There
no
is
pooling
big time
of
nepotism in the judiciary. Is that the question?
Yes, yes, it is. That's one part, and the other part I think is you know the Calcutta High Court judge who's now contesting elections. So there's no pooling.
So let's answer the nepotism question. There's big time nepotism in the judiciary. You do know that the current Chief Justice is the son of a former Chief Justice of India. How does that happen? How does it come about? So you look at the caste composition of the judiciary, and you'll find that the dominant composition of the judiciary is Brahmin. If you look at the caste composition, do you have sons and daughters of judges flooding the courtroom? Yes, you have sons and daughters of judges flooding the courtroom. There was what is known as the phenomenon of the uncle judge. Okay, I don't hear it so much now, but the phenomenon is still there. So you will have the daughter of judge's co-judge going and arguing in a judge's court, and you would expect, and you do see, a certain amount of familiarity. So there has been a lot of debate in this country, fortunately, about encouraging first-generation lawyers, but it hasn't happened, in my opinion. I still see a lot of. So you didn't ask me the question whether, that's why I said first generation lawyers. You didn't ask me the question whether there's nepotism in the legal profession. There is. So you will find the senior most lawyers of the country encouraging their sons, hardly their daughters, okay, but encouraging their sons to become as high profile and as prominent as them. Uh, there's nothing more I can say except to answer your question bluntly, yes. Your second question is unrelated to the first question. That is the ideological corruption of the judiciary. It has happened. There is a substantial amount of right wing uh, uh, thinking among judges. We've had judges appointed to the Supreme Court of India who, as sitting judges, have said, Modi is my hero. Right? That was the first time I was more than shocked. It was Justice M.R. Shah when he was a High Court judge. He said, Modi is my hero. And the next thing we saw, he got appointed to the Supreme Court. So there's, in that sense, your second question can be answered by saying that the independence of the judiciary is in grave danger today. You had the appointment of Victoria Gowrie being challenged on the ground that she was, not on the ground that she was a member of a BJP Mahila Sangatan, but on the ground that she spoke about white terror, which was Christianity, and green terror, which was Islam. With this kind of stereotyping and profiling of the people of this country, she got appointed to the judiciary, and the challenge to her appointment was rejected by the Supreme Court. So that really says it all. There's no law which prevented, people have written articles to point out that there's no law which prevents this judge from contesting an election, resigning and contesting an election. There's been a suggestion that all his judgments should be reopened. I think there is some such move.
Okay. Okay. Yes. And then and one then behind the camera. Oh yeah.
Good evening, ma'am. Just wanted to have your thoughts on the collegium system of the appointment of judges vis-a-vis, it being appointed by the government or the executive. I mean, we have seen a recent example of the election commissioner being appointed. I don't think, at least my opinion, it's not the correct way of going about it, of removing the chief justice from the panel of being the one of the appointers. But what do you think about the collegium system which is prevailing currently? Thank you.
Also, Indira, in the Congress manifesto, in the judicial reforms, they've said, national judicial, the NJAC kind of body to determine, in consultation with the Supreme Court, to determine the appointment of judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court.
Yeah. So, the question is linked to my answer to his question because it's the collegium which has led to nepotism, right? How did all these judges get appointed? Through the collegium. So, yeah, there seems to be a very comfortable relationship between the collegium and ruling parties or the executive, call it what you like. So the next thing is, what about the Congress manifesto, which says that what you need is a National Judicial Commission. Now, a National Judicial Commission would work depending on its composition, its independence, but not only that, but also what you see, like in the United States of America, the ability to question a potential candidate about his or her background. Without that, a national commission will end up being collegium number 2. So, as you know, the law which was challenged, the National Judicial Appointments Act, passed by the NDA government, which the late Mr. Arun Jaitley defended and which he commented upon when the court struck it down, saying unelected people are deciding what to do in this country. And I had occasion then to make a rather flippant comment to him saying, Mr. Jaitley, you've never been elected yourself. And you are sitting there as a minister. So why are you making this comment? Make a more substantive comment about the issue of appointments. And but that act did not have uh, the ability to be able to question a potential judge about his or her background, either as a lawyer or as a sitting judge, which you obviously have seen in the United States of America happening in the Senate, in the confirmation committee. So I think without that, all talk in the Congress manifesto of having a National Judicial Commission in consultation, why won't it be a collegium number two? I think the Congress manifesto has gone wrong on that account.
Interesting. Oh, last question.
I think my questions have been asked by these two, but just as a follow up, when we spoke about nepotism in the legal profession, one thing I would definitely like to make a comment is if you see the central government standing council list, if you go through the list, if you see the lawyers, there are more or less either judges' kids or senior lawyers' kids in that list. One on nepotism. And you already asked the collegium question, but today Justice Rohinton Nariman made a remark saying that good and independent judges are often not rewarded by the collegium. And he was saying this in reference to Justice Akil Qureshi. Do you agree with what Justice Nariman says?
Are you from Delhi? Yeah? You're from Delhi High Court, right?
No, no. I'm
No.
on Baron bench.
No, I was just going to give a few examples from Delhi High Court. There are, Justice Shakhtar was punished by being transferred out of Delhi. And in my opinion, it was one of the reasons was one of the cases I had argued in his court of Greenpeace, where the activist was uh, permitted by him to travel abroad. And soon after that, he got transferred. So, yes, your second question is right. Uh, those judges who abide by the constitution appear to be victimized, and Akhil Qureshi is definitely one of them, one of the judges who everybody agreed uh, ought to be sitting in the Supreme Court, and he was not. Again, the root cause is the collegium system. And she had another question.
No, it was a comment. Did you have another question? No. That was the question. Did you agree with
Oh, the panels. The panels, yes. The panels do consist of sons and daughters of sitting judges, but they also consist of people who are handpicked by ruling parties, by the executive, hoping that they will go. I really want to ask you this question as a young person. What do you make of the argument by the public prosecutor in Kejriwal's bail case? Uh, he, he, he's on the panel, right? A panel lawyer must have gone and argued this, that somebody is eating all kinds of diet in order to fall sick, in order to get medical bail. Now, this is the quality of your PPs. These are the people appointed, and they are told what to go and argue in court.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Any idea why does Mr. Modi keeps winning elections again and again?
Any idea why Mr. Modi keeps winning elections?
Again and again.
Don't be so sure he's going to win. A lot of people have said that, well, if you look at his body language and his level of frustration, he thinks he's losing. Whether he wins or not, I can't tell you. I'm not an astrologer.
He just played the, sorry, just to continue that, there's been this statement he made about the fact that there are foreign powers who are now aligning up to bring him down. So now he's finally played the foreign card, foreign hand. We're closing the evening. So last word for the lady, hang on.
I just want to know your opinion on same sex marriages. I know that already it has been highlighted because I'm a mental health professional. So I keep seeing such cases of that in the marital also, the women are either bisexual or the men are gay and still be in the marriages, or either the two people are dating who are from the same sex, like homosexual relationships. So what's your say about that? Because court already rejected that. So
Yeah, she said the Supreme Court has rejected it. What's your view on same-sex marriages?
Look, there is one escape route for all courts when they don't want to decide an issue, and that is
Ask
that
Parliament.
the issue is something the legislature should decide.
Yeah.
They fall back on the doctrine of separation of powers when they are in a tight situation. So, in this situation, I felt that the judges found themselves in a very tight situation with the arguments advanced by the Solicitor General of India, Mr. Tushar Mehta. And sometimes you will find government lawyers openly threatening judges that
Was being twice, I think, so rejected.
you're talking
I think
about
so.
Saurav Kripal. Yes. That I think is answered by my answer to the collegium system. Okay. Now, in this particular case, the judges have recommended his appointment, and it's the
Turned it
government
down.
which has. But the judges don't have the guts to issue a mandamus saying you shall appoint him. That's the issue.
That so okay, we're done with questions. I think Indira, we are going to let you go. But what do you do to unwind? Do to unwind?
Go to the bar.
Okay, the perfect
Thank
way
you.
to end the evening. Thank you
Please,
so much, Indira.
big hand for both of them. One more round. Thank you so much.